Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review I'm delving into the world of the Third Doctor adventures, I know, quite unlike me, as I'm going to be taking a look at the Quintessence, a 6-part epic as written by Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle, featuring Tim Treloar as the Third Doctor alongside Jo Jones as portrayed by Katie Manning. This release is available to order now on the Big Finish website on both physical CD and digital download. To start off with, I absolutely love the cover art for this one. Sean Longmore has done a superb job. I love how the characters are within the cyber eye and the Cyberman is reaching out. I think it looks really cool and it sets the scene for this story very well. It's a haunting, chilling episode. So as you all know, if you are a regular listener to my Big Finish audio drama reviews, I don't frequent the Third Doctor adventures much, if at all, but this box set was one that I simply had to experience. Firstly, because I feel like I should give Tim Treloar's Third Doctor more attention after loving him within Deathworld earlier this year. I do also love a bleak Mondasian Cyberman story, so this episode feels right up my street, and the writers for this episode are frequent contributors to the Torchwood series, and I have immense respect for their talents, so I feel like this episode is one that I should definitely give a go. The story opens in such a bizarre, disorientating way. This theme continues throughout parts 1 and part 2. As a listener, I felt like I was really on the back foot. We're thrown into this odd world of Nefara Reach with as many questions as Jo and the Doctor. The characters are in the midst of this 10,000-year-old storm, light years from any human civilization, and they stumble across a grand Victorian house, which obviously is rather unexpected. The house goes by the name of Always. There is a candle which is lighting the way, which is incredibly ominous, and inside there is Arthur and Lucy Papadine with their daughter Emmeline. But who are they and why does everything feel like Victorian Britain? So this whole world was a really unexpected way to start off Quintessence, and I enjoyed trying to piece together the Cybermen's involvement within this story because I couldn't particularly see how we were going to get from point A to point B. It's clear Emmeline is unwell. She's obsessed with stories and dancing as she has so little else going on in her life, and Felicity Kant does Sickly Child so very, very well. So there you go, Felicity. That's something for your acting CV if you want it. It's a really sinister, eerie performance, and her song is very, very creepy, and it kind of ties the story together. I love how it blends into the music score for this release. Of course, the Cyberman involvement in itself within this story is very special, given the Third Doctor never seen them on screen, so it's as if we're tampering into something new, or even almost unbound. It feels very different to your usual Third Doctor adventure. And because this story tackles Jo Jones rather than Jo Grant, a much older, more experienced version of the character, of course there is a different relationship between herself and the Doctor. I've not heard the previous box set with Jo Jones, being The Return of Jo Jones, a rather convenient title. I don't think that it is really essential to enjoy Quintessence. It may provide a little bit of context as to how their relationship has formed once again, how they've crossed paths, but it's not essential to enjoy this story. Which is really lucky for me because the writers in The Return of the Cybermen sell this set alone. And if you're in the same boat, do not worry, you can listen to this box set having not listened to the previous one. The older Jo elements are excellently woven into all 6 parts of the plot. We have moved away from Jo being the one who always needs help. There is this lovely moment actually towards the beginning of the story where the Third Doctor falls as they first encounter Nefara Reach, and Jo is the one to help him up. It's a really subtle thing, however again it shows perhaps how their dynamic has changed over time. But then again, there is also the same characteristics which makes Jo Jo. She has a great instant bond with Emmeline, which reminded me of the lovely, endearing, magical charm of older Jo within the Sarah Jane adventures. Now, towards the beginning of the story, I did worry that maybe there wasn't going to be enough focus on the fact that this is older Jo, and the release wasn't going to use the overall plot arc that these stories are accumulating. But come the end of the episode, I was satisfied that that wasn't the case, which is all I will say on that without ruining the later half of the story. Maybe in my head a little bit, I do question what is the intention of bringing older Jo back with the Third Doctor. Is there something else going on later on down the line within this series? But what I like is that doesn't particularly matter for this release. It doesn't matter what's going to be going on in the future. This is a standalone box set that you can enjoy within its own right. So come part 3 onwards, we are digging into the nitty-gritty of this Cyberman tale. It's definitely a Cyberman story with a difference, though it's in ways that I don't particularly want to explain. Yes, there are Cybermen present, but there is also other, more dominant forces at work within this story, which are kind of the focus of the narrative. But the Cybermen themselves do still get adequate attention, and it's clear that the writers themselves have taken inspiration from the infamous Spare Parts, the 10th Planet, and World Enough in Time, but importantly, they've also brought their own interests to the table as well. The horror, the paranormal aspects, as well as generally being very good at writing character. So this story doesn't just feel like a Frankenstein of other Cybermen episodes, it has new and exciting contributions in there as well. This duo is a writing powerhouse at Big Finish. They have devised a blockbuster Cybermen epic within the Third Doctor Adventures range, amalgamating the scale and ambition of NuWho with the tradition and warmth of the classics. And as a result, it's a starkly different story to the 70s Who that we've seen on screen. It will take those that like a more authentic era-inspired story by surprise, but in the company of older Joe, this route is one that absolutely makes sense. It is a fresh interpretation of classic Who. I think one of the strengths of having Lauren and Stuart come over from the Torchwood line in particular is the Torchwood series, for the most part, is incredibly contemporary, very forward-thinking. It's very now and in the moment. It's also a much different pace of storytelling, and incorporating that format into the classic series, it makes for a very fresh take on classic Doctor Who, but also takes away perhaps the restriction and the slower pace of the classic series. It does make for a different listening experience, but this will not be for everyone. It's like the Third Doctor and Joe put under a new contemporary lens. It's a chilling and refreshing take on the Cybermen's Mondasian origins, and yes, it is bleak at points. There are some excellent conversion-inspired horror moments, and of course the Mondasian Cybermen voices themselves by Briggs are bloody creepy anyway, and at points I was hoping that they would push even further, because I love how daring Big Finish were within the early days, particularly the likes of Spare Parts, that has some very grim moments, but I think that they did what they could within the restrictions of the format, given that Doctor Who can't go all-out horror. And what I love about the Mondasian Cybermen, even on audio, and often the story's very location embraces this as well, is that these Cybermen are prototypes. They are parts that have been bashed together, walking, butchered cadavers. They are a constant reminder of what came before the conversion. Other Cybermen stories lose that because they are more focused on perfection. They are completely encased in armour. It's often easy to forget, particularly with NuWho, that there is a human on the inside of that is suffering and slowly rotting away. But for those who like Spare Parts, yes, we return to those more 50s inspired historical locations, sort of clashing with that rather futuristic technology, and the way that this conversion has completely dominated a society, took everyone over, and basically killed the entirety of the population. So it's a really nice blend of Spare Parts, but offering something new as well, which, given Spare Parts' rather notorious reputation, it is quite daring to revisit a story like that and offer something new. Everyone is going to be comparing it to Spare Parts, and therefore it is setting a rather high threshold to try and surpass or be as good as, but I think this story does do a very good job of doing that. And especially when you consider that this story begins with a sickly, coughing child spluttering away, dreaming about something better, this also really adds to the chilling nature of this story, because children are often filled with dreams and aspirations for life and hopes for the future, and then you contrast that with the Cybermen who have all of that taken away, and it is a really lovely, not heartfelt, emotionless blend, which makes for a very bleak story at points. And because of this adventure's mould-breaking nature, I think this does stretch Tim Treloar's Third Doctor in new, exciting ways. Because this story is, of course, the audio drama format, I can absolutely detach it from the TV show and Pertwee's initial portrayal. I think the only way that this would distract me is if I was a frequent viewer of his TV stories, which in fairness I'm not, or if I came directly from having watched a TV story and then started to listen to Quintessence. But I'm absolutely on board with this recasting, as it provides for new and exciting stories. And again, there is a notable warmth between 3 and Joe, which makes this recasting absolutely believable, much like how it was within Deathworld. Both of the characters have a role to play within the relationship, and there is also an acknowledgement that time has passed since Joe has last seen the Doctor. I love how the writers use this factor to create a little bit of a challenge for them both later on within this story, but what I will say is that 3 does also feel a little bit out of depth at points. It's weird hearing him explore an alien world because I'm so used to him being stranded on Earth. There is also some lovely speeches which again capture the mystery but also the love of travel that has been taken away from the Third Doctor, particularly as he describes to Joe the history of Mondas and the origins of the Cybermen. That is a really lovely moment, and his interactions with later on, which I will not be mentioning who that is. Now, I'm not an expert on Pertwee mannerisms, but I certainly believed what I was hearing. I think the fact that Jon Pertwee has never done Big Finish, he only did some BBC radio plays back in the 90s, probably helps that, because there is nothing to compare to. But much like the Stephen Noonan First Doctor adventures, it provides an opportunity to tell new bold stories, and I'm all for that. Perhaps too, one of the main factors which makes this story so effective is it's written today, rather than in the 70s. The Cybermen are a very technically advanced race, so we see the writers explore some of the methods that they use to omit their cyber supremacy throughout the universe that would have probably been a bit too bold for 70s Who. Or at least there wouldn't have been budget to do it effectively. And because of that, this story does feel rather cinematic. How far will the Cybermen go to survive? And I guess there is also some questions about the meaning of life thrown in there as well for good measure. Without revealing too much, some of the later episodes return to that more surreal environment that we had within the first 2 parts of the story, where there is lots of mystery and the listener is wondering what on earth is going on, but this time it's somewhat grounded in technology and the imagination rather than the haunting mysteries of the House of Always on the far reach. Across the 6 parts, the story overall has quite a grand scope, and yet somehow Stephen and Lauren managed to tell this tale with so little characters. We have the TARDIS team, the Cybermen, Drexel, and the Pepperbean family, and that's it, which is a really impressive feat, I think. For some listeners, I think this story may drag a little bit in parts. I think that it could have certainly been reduced in size, but that isn't necessarily something that should have been done to make this story better. Spanning 6 parts gives the writers so much space to play with, which, coming from their previous ventures with the likes of the 8th Doctor and within the Torchwood series, it's a really exciting concept, giving these 2 writers such a long duration to do whatever they want with, having only previously had like 1 and 2 hour stories. So coming out of the other side of this adventure, I think it works really well as a complete package if you bear with it. But perhaps at points it can take a while to get going, particularly parts 1 and 2. It is one of those episodes where if you don't fully feel it, I definitely recommend revisiting it at a later date. But if anything, as I've been putting this review together, discussing the separate elements, discussing the characters, it shows to me how much I actually cared about this story and the characters within it and the story that it was telling. So this is an ambitious Cyberman tale, which treads new territory, embraces the strengths of previous notorious Cyberman adventures. It challenges 3 and Joe Jones in personal ways, whilst maintaining the traditional spirit of classic Who, whilst also injecting the energy and scale of NuWho adventures. Well done, Lauren Mooney and Stuart Pringle, you've well and truly done it again. So there we go, that is my review of the Third Doctor Adventures, The Quintessence, with the Third Doctor and Joe Jones, a story of which that I was really looking forward to, and I kind of broke the mould a little bit by listening to this release, and I'm definitely glad that I did, because I was already attracted to this story because of the characters, because of the return of the Cybermen, especially 3 with the Cybermen, and of course the writing team behind this story. And now that I've listened to the episode, it's not what I was expecting. I was definitely expecting a different story, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that this is a great celebration of the Cybermen, both in the way they are represented within the classic series and the new series, with a sprinkling of Big Finish variety in there as well. Now, I am aware that the other Third Doctor adventures are very much a celebration of the specific era that Third Doctor and companion relationship are from. So, for example, the Third Doctor and Liz Shaw stories are a celebration of the format of Season 7. Then you have the Third Doctor and Sarah Jane adventures as well. This series does break that format. This is a different version of the Third Doctor in a slightly new era, and I'm aware that that will not be to everyone's tastes because it is doing something a bit different. But if you did enjoy this story and you are a regular listener of the Third Doctor adventures or Classic Who generally, then I definitely recommend checking out Stuart Pringle and Laura Mooney's other work within Doctor Who and Torchwood. They just add a flourish, I think, to anything that they do, and this episode most certainly shows that. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for reviews of the latest Big Finish releases. Have a nice day. I shall see you all next time.